Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zach Cherry, and with me as always is...
Damn it! I said I was all right! Are you listening to me? Do you hear what I'm saying? I'm all right! I'm all right. Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And today we are talking about Evil Dead 2, released March 13th, 1987. 35 years ago.
Oh my god.
Not to this very day, but 35 years ago. And we already covered The Evil Dead, the first one, way back, episode 16 of the podcast. And we will most likely be covering Army of Darkness and Evil Dead, the 2013. I don't even want to call it a remake because I don't know what to call that yet.
Requel. I think it's in requel territory.
Sure. Leading up to the release of Evil Dead Rise, which is slated for sometime in April. So yeah, I guess this is kind of our Halloween, just like the new franchise that we're gonna kind of follow.
Okay.
To the release.
And Scream.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. We always do Scream, so it's
right.
It just seems like until we have nothing left to cover anymore. But when we talked about The Evil Dead,
yeah.
I mean, I remember how I felt, and I sort of remember, like, I think that we were both kind of tepid about it. Like, we like it, but I don't think that our opinion was that it wasn't like the great masterpiece, the classic that a lot of people say it is. Am I correct in that shared?
I think what I remember my 2 cents was essentially I respect it for what it is in terms of its achievement and in terms of like what they were able to scrap together with like a budget. And I do like a lot of it. It is not like my least favorite of the franchise, but it is not my favorite horror movie. And it's not even among my favorite horror movies, the first movie.
Yeah.
It's, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, cause I was excited to get to this entry because I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like, ever since I first saw these movies, Evil Dead 2 really was my Evil Dead movie. And for all intents and purposes, this is like a remake of sorts of the first movie. It's maybe like the first couple of like 5 minutes or so is just a remake, and then it gets into the continuation, the sequel territory. Like you could probably take at least 3 of like the trilogy up to Army of Darkness and do like a supercut and like have like one string of continuity that would include the majority or like the bulk of each 3 of those movies.
I think in terms of its relation to the first movie, I probably prefer like what is offered just for the brevity and also just for the sense of humor. Like, I mean, this was my first Evil Dead movie I ever saw. And before we go into backstory and everything like that, shall I offer a premise?
Yeah, if you got one.
Yeah, I got one. Okay. I modified this. The original was written by Chris Seeley on IMDb.com, and I modified it to, I don't know, just so I'd like it better.
Yeah.
In this sequel to The Evil Dead, Ashley Williams still has not managed to escape the evil from the first movie. In fact, retelling the story only leaves Ash and his very much alive girlfriend Linda back in the beginning for whatever reason. But after beheading and chainsawing the deadite Linda, Ash must survive another night in the cabin, accompanied now by the professor's daughter, a mechanic, an associate of the professor, and the mechanic's girlfriend. But will the vow of the thing in the darkness prove correct if they all become Evil Dead 2? Dead by Dawn? Huh?
Yeah. Okay, so there's a bit at the beginning when when Ash and Linda are first driving up, because I don't think that like it's specified that it's Linda yet, because it's obviously not the same actress who plays Linda.
Right.
That's the thing. It's like it's a different Linda in every movie, and I think by default my favorite Linda is probably Army of Darkness, because it's Bridget Fonda, but that's the only reason why. But in this, there's like a line that because she's like, so what are we going up to this cabin for anyway? Or like he seems to be familiar with it, or just like in terms of like what he's saying. So I was thinking at first like, so is he really that fucking nuts that he's gonna go back to this place? Because I just assumed this was like the sequel. It's just like, now we're going back. Right. It's like several years later. He had some unfinished business. He's taken a new girlfriend up there. But then, confusion and then like clarity, but still a lot of confusion.
I couldn't remember after, I was trying to remember, because I've completed Ash versus the Evil Dead, and I won't offer any spoilers.
Thank you.
But I will say, all I remember is ambiguity, and I liked that. So because it's like, well, yeah, just let it all exist, why not? But like I was saying, this was my first Evil Dead movie. I hadn't even heard of the Evil Dead prior to this. When I was in high school, I think I was either 16 or 17. I remember this kid Abel wore all black and dyed his hair black and parted it in the middle, that 90s thing, and he convinced our English teacher. I was in AP. I guess I was a senior in high school, so I was 17. I guess he convinced her that this movie was going to be a study of the Necronomicon, because he did a little presentation about it in class, and convinced her to let us have a day where we watch at least the first, however long the duration of class is, the first 54 minutes or whatever of the movie. Yeah. And he kept talking to me like he had gotten away with something. And he even started chatting it up to me, like in a way like he wanted me to think it was going to be really, really good, but I always got the sense that he thought it was good, but that he thought I wasn't going to think it was good. Anyway, if that makes any sense. I thought it was going to be all stuffy, and like, because he's like, this guy Bruce Campbell's in it. Do you know Bruce Campbell? I'm like, no. And he's just like, he's a really good actor. Like, you want to be an actor? He's a great actor. And I'm just kind of like, okay. All right. And I the thing was, I remember when I was watching it, I had probably the exact opposite response he was expecting, because he kept looking at me while I was watching the movie.
He's like you with everyone else.
But I'm not like trying to bait anybody. I'm not going like, no, you're really gonna love this. You're gonna fucking love this, and just like sit there like biting my nails to the nubs, and just like waiting for them to I don't know, erupt in anger or go like I disapprove. But instead I laughed my ass off. The whole class did, and we all just had a really, really good time with it. For whatever reason, the teacher let the movie run for the duration of the period, and we did not complete it. But I remember as soon as I could, I got to a Blockbuster after that, found the second movie, rented it, and watched it from the beginning again.
So it was
all the way through to the
first
end.
Movie that you were watching, or the second?
No,
movie?
It was the second movie.
Okay.
He was showing us Evil Dead 2, Dead by, because I remember even the way he presented it to me. He said, first movie has less of a budget and it's trying harder to kind of be legitimate horror, whereas this one really kind of embraces the laughter, but not too much. In his opinion, like the train tracks he was putting me on, was that Army of Darkness, which had been released somewhat recently, he said that one leaned into the humor too much for his liking. So this was kind of like the perfect marriage. And as I was watching it, I was like, this is a perfect marriage. I absolutely, and I haven't felt anything differently about it throughout the years.
That's probably the perfect way to describe that trilogy, is just that one is a little too serious for its own good. One is just a little too hokey, but then this one is like just right, it's like the Goldilocks. Like
it's the porridge that Goldilocks chose.
Yeah, totally. And I think that because this is very much like the same movie, well, for a good portion of it, or just at least like the first little bit of the movie that it's almost like they work, it's like they were doing the same story, but they had a budget this time, and they could do all the things that they wanted to before but couldn't. And even like in spite of all that, I can still see kind of like the film student aspects of it, of just like the effects and everything. And it's still it works this time because it just feels like it's all part of the fun.
Yeah, it's got a fun house quality, if you will, which I'm totally on board for. But also, that was the thing that shocked me was while I was watching Bruce Campbell for the first time. First off, I was still in the closet, but I was like, damn, he handsome. But I also remember thinking his commitment to the extremes in all of these situations, I'm in absolute awe of, and I feel like that's kind of like that's kind of all I knew how to do. I didn't have any technique or anything like that. So all I knew was how to go for broke and just be as outrageous as possible. And for a long period in my teens, that's who I was as an actor, was just Eddie, but the same way he is Bruce, he's, and he's proven himself, since then, but I don't know. It doesn't make me dismiss anything he did here, or even in the first movie. I like a lot of Ashley.
Yeah. Well, I think that we were
movie, The Innocents.
when we did talk about the first movie, there was kind of like what we found with him is that he was very ineffectual as a character and a final boy. Like he was kind of like the one that was cowering in the corner. That was kind of how he made it out alive, because he was like the last person to really get involved with the situation, which I mean, I could relate to. If shit's going down, I'm probably gonna like sit back and assess until
you're not gonna embrace the action hero within.
No, fuck no. I used to work at a club, a nightclub. I've said this before, and there's every now and then there'd be like fights that break out, and I remember like the manager one night got into a fight, and then literally like every other bartender and busser and staff got involved, and I was just standing there, and I was just like, what the, like, why? What, like, this is like 15 versus 1 at this point, whoever that they were taking on. And I'm just thinking, like, I care too much about my face and
I was just gonna say,
my like bodily health to get involved in any situation where I might get hit or concussed or stabbed. You never know. Like, you do, like, at this point, like, everyone's getting involved. You're not de-escalating the situation. If anything, you're giving more fire to whoever this individual is that they're gonna attack. So I was happy to just kind of like sit back, and in a way, in like my own little like sick way, I was just like, this is kind of entertaining too, because like just watching like the idiocy of just people, like, you don't need to do this, but I'm glad you are, because this is entertaining. Not so much when people get hurt, but yeah, in a horror movie, you would find me in the back. Like, if this was the type of horror movie where the people who do kind of fall to the back are the first ones to get picked off, that might be my undoing. That would be where I would get taken out, because it was just like, like, just more of like the unsuspecting. It's just like, we'll get them because nobody's really paying attention to them. That's where I would be fucked. But I think that in an Evil Dead situation, yeah, because even in this movie, like the guy, the blonde guy, I forget his name.
So do I. I'll look it up.
Yeah, he's so unimportant. But he gets turned because he was like...
Is it Ed?
Maybe.
Ed Getley.
Because he he had to like go in there and do his thing, and then immediately he got like pushed in, he got like jilled into that picture frame, and and then he was like he was like sitting on the couch with like a bandage on his head, and then he just popped up like, now I'm a Deadite, like, so so yeah, I think the people who kind of lay to the back, like they live a little bit longer in these Evil Dead movies. We'll see though.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, I guess. I don't know. I mean, doesn't except for our like core two, like Annie and Ash, isn't the other one who lasts the longest? What's his name? I always forget his name. Jake, because ugh. But I mean, like, talk about somebody who didn't deserve to survive as long as he did everything wrong. But I'd say. I don't know who I'd be in an Evil Dead scenario. I think it's relative. I'm very much depends on the group of people I'm with. Mm-hmm. I think it also depends on the scenario itself, because if you have no expertise to offer, you can't really take control and lead. But if you kind of know, like if you're, I don't know, if you're trapped inside of like basically like a working computer that's the size of a building and you're a tech geek, you know, you can kind of take the lead a little bit more, or but with Evil Dead, because that's a thing, and nobody walks in with like an absolute expert. In fact, the expert per se with Professor Nobi is the one who actually commits the most heinous act, because he's the one who just reads the words into the fucking recorder. So anybody who goes back and plays it is going to summon the Evil Dead back to the cabin. And
I mean, I wouldn't really call something heinous if you didn't know any better. You know, if you knew what you were doing, then it's heinous.
Okay, neglectful.
Sure,
act,
there we go.
Heinously neglectful.
Jesus.
But interestingly, though, I feel like, and I don't know if you're going to be able to relate to this, because I don't know if you've seen these movies yet, but I was thinking while I was watching it, one thing I really feel, because we get so much isolated time with Ash in this movie versus the Evil Dead, like it's 35 minutes before. I mean, sure, Linda's there, but we don't really get to see her interact with it the way he does. You know, she's just kind of there, and then all of a sudden she's possessed or whatever. She's a Deadite. Mm-hmm. And then it's basically Ash versus the Evil Dead for about 30 minutes or so, for about a half hour. And with intercut, introductions to Annie and the crew and everything. Yeah. But I'm watching these bits that he's doing, and they also feel structured like comedy bits. Oftentimes you'll hear people who craft horror movies just comparing it to humor in terms of timing and in terms of like, it needs to be a beat here, beat here, beat here, and payoff, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And these are kind of like vaudeville routines / scares, which I really, really appreciate the melding of the two of them. Expertly executed by Bruce Campbell. But what the extra thing that's added in for me that makes me love this movie is I never stop feeling sympathy for Ash. I'm always there going, God, he must be so tired. And it actually creates, the only kind of character in recent cinema who I've kind of felt that way about is John Wick. I just remember sitting next to my sister in both Evil Dead movies and in John Wick movies, and just fretting about like, God, he just it just won't let up. The things just keep piling on top of him. That poor guy. And anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because it occurred to me. Yeah. But I really do sympathize with him to the point where once the newbies all come into the cabin and start beating up on him, I'm so angry at the injustice of it all, because he didn't do nothing wrong. You'd hope somebody would have the presence of mind when they hear something playing on that tape to just stop it. But at the same time, I think he's the one who knows the least, of the people who have been in that cabin. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah, sympathy for him.
I was gonna say the newbies, wasn't that the name of the professor? But it's Nobi. Close enough. When the newbies and the nobbies, yeah, all of them. No, I've actually never seen a John Wick movie, but that aside,
it's like this, but but different.
There's definitely a lot of this movie. In fact, like this whole movie really feels like a stage play, and it could be like a one-man show for that first 35 minutes, because there is a lot of miming, and I mean, like, other than like stuff with like Linda and when the newbies show up, that I was even like watching and I'm just like, not a lot has happened, but they're really filling the time well. Mm-hmm. Like that's the thing, because like this the whole script for this amount of time, it's not dialogue. Like there are little bits of dialogue, but it's all technical. Like I just imagine like everything that's written is just like, and now Ash is gonna go and look at this rocking chair that is rocking back and forth, and then his hand gets possessed, and then he cuts it off, and all that happens. So if that takes up like 35 minutes of the movie or however much time it is, like it's really well paced. Because it does not feel like it at all.
And I also, this is potentially a contentious point for me to bring up, but it made me realize, like, oh, this is kind of the antithesis of the House on Haunted Hill scenario for me, the remake we discussed.
I thought about that too.
Yeah, because even though we have two couples, who the couples obviously know the people that they are entwined with, the couples themselves don't know each other. Like, they're not going to go off and have dinner parties after this if they survive, and then they meet Ash and they don't know who he is. And he was there as a couple with Linda, but that didn't last long. So essentially, and we don't really get all that much exposure. Like once they do kind of come in, there's not a lot of exposition as to the context of the relationship, so it's not really like that's the strongest part of the story. And for whatever reason, because maybe it's because of the way we're praising the way everything else is handled, I don't require that. I'm like, I get the premise. It's people, bunch of people, maybe they know each other, maybe they don't, but they're all going into a spooky place together, and the spooky shit is entertaining as fuck. It's either playing off like slapstick or it's playing off like, because actually there is one thing, the little things that aren't scary per se, but they're weird enough that if I watch them late enough at night, they do upset me. Like I have a real problem with that mounted deer head laughing. I love it, like, because it's an incredible moment, but it really, if I watch this movie after midnight and I just see that, maybe it's because of the sickly colors in the fur or something like that, and the dead eyes and everything like that, and it's such a weird laugh. It's one of those things I'm just like, ugh, wouldn't want to be in the room with that. If I went through an Evil Dead 2 maze and I saw that, I'd keep my distance, and I'd try not to look scared just so it wouldn't like try to scare me more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up that character point, because it totally did dawn on me. And just for context, for anyone who's listening that did not watch our podcast a few weeks back for House on Haunted Hill,
right.
Eddie reasoned that he did not respond as well to movies of characters who are all strangers who meet each other for the first time, with the exception of the Saw movies for some reason. Because you said
not all of them either.
Yeah.
Not even all of the Saw movies. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but you said that you prefer to have like already pre-existing relationships that are kind of built upon. And I totally would have forgot to mention this had you not brought it up, because even as I was watching it, I'm just like, I wonder if he prefers the first Evil Dead to this, just for that fact alone. Because I was just thinking, like, here's like a bunch of strangers coming together. Because even like when we first get like the bridges out and they pull up, and then you've got Jake and Bobby Joe there. Love their entrances, by the way, like especially Bobby Joe. Like, I love how she's like always has to spit after everything.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm just thinking like, so is he gonna like these people? Because it's like, they're just randomly coming together. So maybe that's not a thing. Maybe it's just that you didn't like House on Haunted Hill.
Maybe I was just noticing a trend, like in movies that people tend to attribute an Agatha Christie element to. I tend not to like. No one has ever made that comment about Evil Dead 2.
Dead by Dawn. Not at all.
So, yeah.
Could you imagine that, like that? I mean, that might be an interesting premise for like a future Evil Dead. It's just
we'll see.
Bunch of well, we don't
handled
know,
properly.
We don't really know what the full extent of what the plot is for Evil Dead Rise. Like, it's going to be in a high-rise apartment building. Supposedly, it's about two sisters, so there's already a relationship there. That sounds like, the premise of that sounds a lot like the movie Demons 2. To me, the Dario Argento written, Lamberto Bava directed, the sequel to the first Demons. Obviously, the first one was set in a movie theater. The second one's in a high-rise apartment. So I'm really excited for that because it sounds like that's what it's going to be. Of just because Demons and Evil Dead, like they're kind of similar in a way. Like it's just like a kind of mysterious, mystical. Like people just start suddenly becoming possessed, like literally out of nowhere, by this demonic entity, and just like having it set in a high rise. Like I hope that there's going to be like some homages and allusions to that movie. So we'll see for sure. I hope that they really, because I was even watching a lot of things in this movie that it felt like, again, like they were taking stuff from the original, The Evil Dead, but just like improved it so much. Like, because there's, all the mist or like the fog. And I really loved how they did the reverse fog, like kind of like going into when like the tree stumps and things like that. I'm like, yeah, that would be really cool. Because it's been a while since I've seen Army of Darkness or Evil Dead 2013, so I don't remember how liberally they used those techniques in those movies, if they did at all. So it'd be nice. I really hope that in that movie they kind of go back to, like, we'll see what they do, just like using more of like the retro special effects that they might have done here.
Practical effects.
Yeah, because I think like it's pretty effective for what it is here.
And there's even allusions to the first movie in this one. Like, I loved seeing the blood on the light bulb when he's in, I believe it's in the shack where it happens. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of the blood filling up the light bulb in the first movie. It has but again, it's like a nod to it, like a tip of the hat, and then kind of like a new development. Like, we have the mirror bit in the first movie where he reaches into his reflection and it's the water. But in this one, it's... You're probably fully expecting that to happen if you've seen the Evil Dead prior to Evil Dead Dead by Dawn, but then all of a sudden Ash himself reaches out through the reflection and touches him and starts talking to him about how we just cut up our girlfriend with a chainsaw. And even the necklace, like, landing, which has become a hallmark of the franchise, the necklace landing in the skull shape on the floor. Or the amulet, if you will. That's what I heard. I heard a little bit of the commentary, and then I had to duck out last night. I just needed to go to sleep. But I heard that Bruce Campbell tried to call the necklace an amulet, and everybody started laughing and said, "Yeah, like $1 amulet. Like you can't call an amulet something an amulet if it costs $1." But I have to say, I think. Another thing that maybe the reason why another reason why I appreciate this and don't need like those relationships or anything like that develop, because actually I find relationships in this movie to be kind of like the death knell for you. Like, I mean, it only makes problems, except for maybe two instances. One is where Deadite Ash sees the amulet and starts to feel something, which seems completely alien to him, and he gets ejected because the sorrow of actual Ash is strong enough to like kind of like overpower him and let him become human again. And the other time is, of course, when Annie sings the fucking lullaby to her. Yes, to Henrietta when she's full on like and she just starts calmly singing to the best of her ability. I even love the little hesitation where I don't remember where it is, but like, and if that mockingbird, something like that. Those are the only times where their emotions seem to like be strengths. The rest of the time, like, you've got the Bobby Joe and everything. Like, dude, shut the fuck up. Get back inside. Stop being such an asshole. Or or even when Annie gets seduced at first by the mocking "Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird" thing, when Henrietta is kind of dead-died in the cellar and singing it to her, and you're just kind of like, don't fall for it. It's not her. Ash, get in there, Yeah. So I kind of appreciate that thematically.
Is not my mother.
Exactly, and I love that too. Like, thematically, your bonds will tear you down.
Yeah.
Unless you're smart about it.
And It's so Ted Raimi is playing Henrietta, or at least like the
Yes!
version. I was even like there was parts where, because they're just like, I buried her in the fruit cellar, and then all I could think of was like Psycho, just like, what do you do you think I'm fruity? But then I love when like Henrietta bursts out and the line is like, someone's in my fruit cellar. However, you can probably do it better than me.
No, that's great.
Someone with a fresh soul.
I did wonder though, like while I was watching, like, do you think if you were, I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation.
Okay, sure.
If you were in an Evil Dead cabin, and you're where your mother, went, and then you just didn't hear from her for a while, so you go to investigate, make sure she's okay, and then you hear some shit going on in the cellar, and you got this stranger, this guy, this Ash person, telling you with his chainsaw hand that that like it's not your mother and everything, it's a deadite and all of this and everything. And then all of a sudden you see your mother and she sings some kind of like childhood song to you, something you associate like, with your childhood or something. I don't know what that would be. Would that fucking ever work on you or anything? Or would it just, all I could think was that would creep me out. If my mom started singing to me as an adult, something she used to sing to me as a boy, I don't think I'd regress into boyhood, Jason Voorhees in Manhattan style. I think I'd
fully exit the room. Like, I can't deal with this shit right now. Not even gonna go there.
Embarrassing me. You are embarrassing me. I'd just be creeped out. I'd be like, ew. That I'd probably say the same line, but with less emphasis. Just kind of like, that thing is not my mother. My mom doesn't sing. My mom doesn't even know the words to songs. She loves to, and anytime I ask her to sing.
Well, like the thing is, because it wasn't so much the singing, but there was. Like, she full on was like, you were born on September 2nd, and I remember it was snowing that day, which was very odd, because when does it snow in early September? Like, that's creepy, because that's like, so the Deadites retain memories of the people that they take over. Very much like vampires, So I don't know, like that probably would have been more effective, but like the singing was just, I mean, it was just to up the camp value, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly did that. Also, I mean, the camp in and of itself, maybe that element in and of itself is what makes this work for me more so. Those strangers in a situation like, I mean, I think I mentioned on the House on Haunted Hill pod that I do like Clue, and that's a bunch of strangers all kind of like brought together by some kind of like, evil that has something on all of them or whatever. So, I mean, maybe if you mix in some comedy, like really mix it in there, and I like your sense of humor, maybe I can get on board a bit more. I also, but I mean, there's even little like kind of silent movie bits. Like I always think about in the first movie, I think we talked about it, the bit with Linda's eyes as she's reaching for the gift, and Ashley is pretending to be asleep, and he's like, opening his eyes and looking at her, and then she'll look at him and his eyes will close. It's such a cute bit. I feel like I get an element of that, just a very slight element again, when Bobby Joe and Jake are standing there, and she's just kind of like, Jake, you're holding my hand too tight, or something like that, and he's just like, baby, I ain't holding your hand. And then we get a reaction shot of Ash and Annie glancing down at their hands, and then we go back to Bobby, Joe, and Jake, and they look down at the same time. That all feels very comedic to me. And it absolutely works. It's
they even did a thing when, like, I guess there was just like the noise that was jumping all over the cabin, and they were saying, oh, it's like something trying to break into our world, but they were all kind of like synchronized, like, now look over here, like it was all very technical of like where everyone's head was going to turn at the exact same time.
Yeah. And I also, of course, I adore Annie's scream. I feel like there's some kind of, if there were a way to give a cherry on top to just a scream, I would nominate any scream.
You're jumping way too far ahead here.
No. But there isn't because we do it for characters. But I'm just saying I would nominate her scream because I get so much joy out of it, and I even love the fact that I get an echo of it later in the finale when Deadite Henrietta, in addition to like her "Asfalto," they also seem to have this chimpanzee sound. It's like like
I
going on
noticed
in the
that,
background.
yeah.
That's an echo for me of Annie's scream because I feel like that's the way she screams, like a chimpanzee, but it almost in a more robotic way, like a
Maybe it was just the same actress. But I did think, like, did they go to a zoo and just like record animal sounds?
I'm sure there was like maybe not a CD, a record back then, an 8-track tape of like, animal sounds and stuff like that. I used to have a CD, like a double CD of like over 200 random sounds. I don't know why I bought it. I think it was less than $4 at Target, but you can get a hold of those things. I know there were definitely those records back in the day, but what I love about it is the abruptness of it, because I think my favorite moment for her scream, I love it anytime she does it, but I think my favorite is when Deadite Ash is beating the door and she's up against it trying to keep him out after she's I think it's after she's shut the door on Jake and has to pull him through, like his legs and everything, and then finally shuts the door and is leaning against it, and she
keeps like closing the door on him.
Right.
And he's just like, I gotta move him.
Again, it feels like a Three Stooges like bit or something like that.
It's very Three Stooges.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like,
just a little
we got
less,
the
a little
fake
more
champ.
subtle. Yes. There you go.
There's always like a Three Stooges, and you could tell like these guys, like they grew up on Three Stooges. Like it's such a huge influence for. I mean, it was even kind of influential for what little bits of comedy we did have from the original. So of course, that's going to be amplified in this movie. I'm just reading some of the trivia on IMDb because I didn't study anything for the movie before.
Okay.
But Sam Raimi credits Stephen King for making the sequel because apparently Stephen King like they didn't have enough money to fund it. I don't know if Stephen King directly contributed to it, but he got the ball rolling for them for sure.
Oh wow!
Like he's the one that convinced financiers to give them the money they needed to make it.
Oh my god, that is so fucking cool. And he was a demigod by then in the horror, not just community but business. By
87. I'm always so because I'll like see his posts on Twitter. If Twitter is even still around for who knows how long, but like I'm always so surprised by the movies that he endorses, or just like because he'll kind of just give his like stamp of approval to things that I would have never expected him to really like be his thing. Like there's one Fall that came out earlier this year, the one where they climb up the radio tower. Terrifying movie, but he's just like, wow, I wish I thought of this idea like that. Like I'm just like, oh wow, I would have. I mean, it's not like a great movie by any means, but it's like it's effective for what it does, like somewhat predictable, but just like to hear him speak highly of things like that, it just shows that he has an appetite for all different kinds of horror. So it's nice that he can see something like Evil Dead and just appreciate what they're doing and just help them out. He's not just like one of those people who's just like out for himself.
I'm the best.
Just like whatever. If my name's attached to it, that's all I care about. So
no, he's a guy from Maine.
Yeah.
But
they all got each other's backs.
But look at you baiting me to go back to Twitter. I just a couple days ago completely wiped out my account because I don't use it anyway, and I figured like there's nothing tempting me. It's just toxic. But now you're reminding me I did follow him. I did follow Stephen King on Twitter, and now I'm gonna miss seeing just his little political barbs or his little endorsements, or sometimes he's just fucking funny. That's upsetting. Now I I have 30 days if I want to reverse it. I'm going to sit on it for a week and think about it if I want to reverse it now. But
okay. Apparently, this is Bruce Campbell's favorite film of the trilogy. Just putting that out so there.
Good in this movie. I watch this movie and I go right back to like being a teenager, feeling like whatever my sexual preference is,
like
I feel like it. I feel like it is Bruce Campbell in this movie. Like if I had to define it for anybody, I'd be like that. That's what I want. It's not all I want. Like, you know, there's a lot of fun and
my sexual orientation is Bruce Campbell and Evil Dead 2 and none of the other ones.
Exactly.
Don't even talk to me about the TV show. I will not have that.
Well, because that's another thing too. Like I won't like show my hand too much for like Army of the Dead. Or Army of Darkness. Sorry, I always get that fucking title wrong. It should just be Evil Dead 3. But anyway, Army of Darkness. But in terms of just like, again, like here we're talking about like kind of where Ashley began in the first movie being kind of like, you know, the anti-alpha male. And then, you know, he certainly does kind of like fully embody this like alpha male action hero, you know, status in Army of Darkness. And in this movie, what I love is there's enough of that happy medium. Like there's that, he's sympathetic enough that I still feel for him, but he's also kind of embracing his inner action hero, but he's not doing it reluctantly, but he is also kind of called to it. There is a sense of subliminal honor in what he's doing, you know, like, I mean, with humor. Like, I mean, that moment where he's like putting the chainsaw on his hand and cutting the end of the rifle off and everything, his boomstick. And then he just sits there and goes, groovy. I mean, well, obviously like, that is a laugh moment, but it's almost like it hits every note it has to.
I get a sense of it that it's like a prophecy because they see in the book that he's in there, like he's in that drawing sort of thing. So it's like it always was his calling. You know, if you can get into the mythology that deep.
If you know, I mean, I remember the first time I saw the movie and I hadn't seen Army of Darkness and I didn't know the end of the movie yet, so I didn't know that's where it was going. Mm-hmm. When they're looking at the book and they see that little kind of stick figure, you know, Ash, I didn't realize that was supposed to be him. I was just like, well, why does this matter? Oh, it doesn't matter. We're on to something new now. I also appreciate the little rat actors. I noticed a lot of rodents in this movie, and every time they were on screen, I just have such an affinity for them. Like, hi, baby, you're doing such a good job. I love them. But, I mean, this is a really... I hope this isn't just like a really boring pod because all I'm doing is singing the praises of this movie.
Well, let's talk about what doesn't work.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is I don't understand if... I know there are people who exist who prefer the first movie, or who even out of the franchise prefer Army of Darkness, and that is their Ash and that is their movie. And I can't say I don't understand. Like sometimes you can see, I guess, where somebody would be coming from if that's, you know, what they mean. But I've never had like a constructive conversation with someone who preferred one or the other, you know, the first or the third, and communicated it to me in an effective way where I was just kind of like, well, that makes sense. You know, like to me, like I can see it through your eyes now. It's just kind of like, well, that's your thing, this is mine, and we just have to accept it. It's always been that. We're
gonna rank these by the time we get to the new one. Because I'm curious to even what mine is. Because I mean, I have an idea right now, just of the four, not including that. And I guess maybe if I have time to watch the series, we can group that in there as well. But I just be interested to see where I land with all five movies and the show.
Yeah, I haven't. Oh God, revisiting the show because I've seen it all the way through once, and I would love to go. I love that series. It's right up there with the Chucky series for me. As far as like recent horror television sagas, like, you know, carrying the torch from the cinematic universe. Oh my God.
It wasn't, as far as I know, it was unfinished. Like it kind of ended on a cliffhanger. Is that...
That's all I'm going to say.
So it was. Okay. Well, from what I understand, he's not in the new one.
Yeah.
But
well, he made it clear
allegedly,
that Ash vs. the Evil Dead was going to be his last foray into the franchise, which I respect it.
But well, we'll see what happens.
We'll see when we get there.
When it comes out
I'm excited for you to find out.
Yeah.
But I do got to say, like, it's one of the strongest tenets for me for this movie, and why I think Abel, the kid who thought I was going to hate it and thought I was going to hate Bruce Campbell and maybe hate Abel. The reason I don't is just because from beginning to end, what I love about it is that I feel like it breaks all the cinematic rules that you would probably learn in film school. Like, it's billed as a sequel, yet it doesn't really make sense as one. They didn't really pave the way for, like, a smooth transition from the first movie to this. And there's no real continuity from where the first film left off. And there's no real character arcs to speak of, except for Ash, which is...
Well, even then I would argue, because his character arc, because you talk about, like, this not quite reluctant hero, but there's not really... Like, between the three movies, there isn't a through line of him kind of overcoming anything or getting to that point. He's just kind of going through, like, he is whatever they need him to be at that particular time. Like, he's not he doesn't have a journey other than if you make that super cut of all three films and then just be like, okay, here we go. But even then, it's not consistent.
Also, the journey is entirely reactionary. Like, it's kind of like letting yourself be defined by the thing you're pushing up against. You know, that thing that the what do they say, the unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. And if we look at the unmovable object as the Deadites, I think is probably the better role for it to play. But the unstoppable force is Ash, because, you know, he is yet to be stopped, as far as, you know, that's the first two movies anyway. It is very much a kind of like rise to the occasion, be what the moment commands of you. But there's something about that makes him even more of an everyman for me. Even though, that opening, I knew I loved the movie just when he was standing there with Linda and he was just raising his eyebrows in that awkward way, talking about, like, how about we open some champagne, huh? And I can't even do it.
I'm a man, and you're a woman. Last time I checked. Or
bomb. Like, what the fuck is he doing? And I'd still hear the class erupting in laughter, and I can see my English teachers just, like, shaking her head, you know, with her hands over her face.
What have I gotten
like,
myself into? Yeah.
Yes, what have I done? Well, I can't stop it because
have you ever had a class where, like, they put a movie on and then they stop it or fast forward or, like, through a bit because they're just like, well, that's not appropriate.
I was in charge of fast forwarding through a bit, actually. I think it was in Excalibur. That old movie from, I think it was the 80s. Maybe it was the late 70s, though. We were watching Excalibur because we were studying in whatever class we were studying, like King Arthur and all that bullshit. And I remember we were watching Excalibur, and my teacher couldn't be there that day. This was another teacher. So the teacher put me in charge of fast forwarding from one timestamp to another timestamp because apparently there's, I guess, a sexual assault and there's some nudity. And I asked, is it all right if I just hit fast forward and not stop it and fast forward it to the spot? Because it'll be easier to be more precise then. And my teacher said yes. So
the teacher wasn't there?
No, there was a substitute. Yeah. Substitute had been told, Eddie is to man the VCR during the assault scene, during the nudity, so the children won't see it and everything. And again, it was in high school, so children, whatever, but they're children. We were kids. But so I went over... And it was one of those deals where, you know, like the big giant television was sitting atop like a kind of
there's like wheelie things.
On wheels. Yeah, exactly. It was wheeling into class, and then the VCR was just below it on another tray, you know, like 3 feet below it.
Yeah.
So I was kneeling near the floor, and I couldn't see the screen. And I just hit fast forward, and it just went, you know, and then I did that until... the end of the timestamp. It didn't take too long. And after it was over, I just heard the substitute teacher say, well, he didn't do a very good job of it, but we'll ignore that and go on. And I remember looking back and going, what did I do? And everybody was like tittering and laughing because apparently they just saw boobies in like fast motion. So I made them go by faster, like, and apparently, like boobies on a faster speed is funny, but I didn't get to see them. So now I'm gay.
You missed out. Yeah, that was the origin. That was your gay.
I was
story,
heterosexual, 100% bona fide heterosexual until that day.
Because you missed out on it.
The fast boobies.
Yeah. I don't remember if there was ever a time where like a teacher stopped a movie or fast forwarded it. But I remember distinctly, I don't know what the fuck, like it was like our music class or like a music theory or some shit. But she like got us to watch the movie Grand Canyon. Like the one with Kevin Kline, and Steve Martin. It was just like the weird, like, why are we watching this? I have no idea. I think she just didn't have a lesson plan for like a month. Right. And it took us a month to watch that movie because we would watch it and it would be like 45 minutes. And then the next time we had the class, she would literally like rewind it 30 minutes because like she couldn't remember where we left off, and we would just keep watching the same part over. So it literally took us a month to get through this entire movie. And each time, like we would tell her like, no, we already saw this part. And she'd be like, nope, that's fine. We're going to start here.
Oh, like, she had other things going on. Yeah. She was padding the job.
Totally.
Wow.
So, wow. But I mean, like, I couldn't complain. I mean, it was like music class, like, so it was already kind of like an easy pass.
Yeah.
I'm sure I found some way to fail it anyway, but it was just like, whatever. This is like, it's like a free period almost. Like, we just have to watch this movie like a million times.
Do you remember the first time you saw this one, Evil Dead 2?
Probably like with a friend of mine. Like we just, I don't know if he owned it or we rented it. We were just like, like probably one weekend just watched it. Yeah, I always really liked it. I always really enjoyed this one more than the original. That's all I remember.
Did you see the original one first?
Yeah, I think I watched them all in order. He had already seen them. Like he was already like telling me about, like he was my able, I guess.
Yes.
He was my enabler to the Evil Dead. Well, your able sounds like kind of a masochist, but no, like he already told me about like there's Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, and that's like set in like the medieval times, and obviously at this point the 2013 one hadn't come out. Like there was just the three movies. But I remember like, because back in the day, because I was like late 90s, early 2000s, the internet was obviously there and, just kind of like a newish sort of thing. So I always, remember going on like horror websites and things and just seeing like, is there going to be a fourth Evil Dead movie? Because I guess like for the longest time, they're just like, yeah, like they're planning on doing a fourth Evil Dead. And I mean, I guess that's eventually what became the series. I don't really know like too much about it, but I was always so fascinated with like finding out this like news about these movies, because there wasn't really like, there's no YouTube back then. There was no like way. I mean, maybe like Fangoria magazine was your best bet. So it was just like going on the internet and finding these like tiny little websites which probably don't even exist anymore, and just getting all of your information that way. I remember that's how I kind of like was following news for Halloween Resurrection. Post H2O, it's just like, how is Michael gonna come back after that? Because it was like, no, they're making another one and Michael is gonna be alive and yada yada yada. So I would watch these movies and I would be all on board for them. So I had seen Evil Dead 1, 2, and Army of Darkness, and I was waiting for that. Like, I didn't know if it was ever going to happen, but I was ready for it,
Yeah. Another thing that I feel like got really improved upon with this movie too. I mean, we already kind of touched on it, but I mean, just in terms of the practical effects themselves, I don't know why I just enjoy them more. They still have a wonderful kitschy feel that doesn't feel pretentious or I mean, it just invites me in, and it's invited me in over 20 years ago when I saw the movie for the first time, and I still find it inviting and comforting every time I watch the movie now. I mean, except for the mounted deer head, but I mean, I just think about like
the blood budget,
but the stop motion animation of like the dance that Linda does out in the night air and everything is, oh my god, and then just her little when she fades off into the background, it gives me so much joy. There's tons of like little golden moments like this. I even just love like the fight in the tool shed where he uncovers, to look for the chainsaw and it's missing, but there's a chainsaw shaped like chalk outline or something there. And then he's just like, where's the chainsaw? And then in runs the disembodied, the disembodied head is resting on the table or wedged and everything. And so in comes the body with the chainsaw and everything. Oh my god!
And then accidentally like starts sawing into it. So I was getting kind of like flashback to last week with Chucky. Or Child's Play 1 of just like the head kind of like controlling the body.
Yes! Except this time she's like talking shit to Ash, which is probably, it's not as funny, but it's more direct. Yeah. It's more visceral.
And I also love how like, cause there's jump scares in this movie, but they're all funny. Like I don't get like startled by anything. It's just, and you can time them too, cause you know when it's going to happen, but every time it happens, it's like a comedy beat. Like it's not a scary moment. And that's one of them because you see like the shadow of the chainsaw or where it was. And then in runs the headless Linda with the chainsaw.
Or when Annie makes the we already said the line several times now, but that thing is not my mother, and then up jumps Ed with that incredible, oh my god, I just love that makeup, just the deadite face on him and everything with the her and everything, and of course the fruit
cellar scare and all of them. There's so many.
I mean, they're countless. Everything, and even down to the other stuff, which I feel like maybe it didn't look so great originally, and maybe that's why they kind of like morphed the shot the way it was, like when the big bad finally during the climax, like the big head comes through the door and everything, and turns Ash's hair white and everything like that. I always wondered about like what they did with maybe I still can't tell if they're trying to correct a mistake or if it's really also maybe designed to try and make it look as though the being is trying to escape from the film strip itself, as if it's, it's warping the film that is playing on, that this movie is on, the projector is playing and everything, like so much that it's like almost going to burst through the screen.
I don't know.
Very
meta.
It works for me. Yes.
I think my favorite effect is when we see the tree outside, like of that establishing. And it's just sort of like coming to life and like sort of like standing up from the roots. That was done really well.
They're like moving like octopus tentacles or something. Like there. Super cool. Super cool.
Really well done. For sure.
And that wasn't something that I remembered from prior screenings. Like there's still things that happen where I'm just kind of like, oh, I forgot about that. Like, like
Same.
It's still, that's one thing about this movie that I appreciate is I saw it young enough that I can still feel nostalgia and remember the first time I saw it, like it as a very different person, and enjoy it on that vein. But I also haven't overwatched it the way I used to overwatch things when I was a child, to the point where watching it almost feels pointless. I don't have it memorized, and I can still kind of experience it again. And there's something to that, like I notice I don't do that with a lot of recent movies either, even the ones I like a great deal. It's almost like I need to let it cool off, because if I overwatch it, it's going to stop having an impact on me, and I don't want that. I want to keep that. I want to stay in love, man. I want to keep the relationship fresh,
Yeah.
But and also just I do admire, because I really didn't understand it the first time I watched. I remember, I think I watched it all the way through with another group of friends who had seen Evil Dead 2 before and had already seen Army of Darkness. So they were, laughing with me again all over at the same things that we laugh at every time. But then when we got to the end and I finally saw the ending for the first time, that he goes back, the fact that it ends on a cliffhanger that has pretty much nothing to do with at least what what the bulk of the film's focus has been up until that point. Like, yes, they lay in that detail about, you know, the one who fights, you know, the man who fell from the sky and fights demons and all that. But if you're seeing the movie for the first time and you don't know anything about Army of Darkness, you're probably like, what the fuck? You know? And it ends on a cliffhanger. That's how you're going to end it? Like, okay, I guess there's going to be a sequel. I don't know. I mean, the fact that I saw Back to the Future Part 1 and Part 2 prior to this movie maybe set me up a little bit more to kind of like digest something like that. But but again, like, this is something you would not teach a film student in, you know, in screenwriting class, and write a cliffhanger. Everything is about closure and about making sure you've tied up loose ends and everything like that, instead of just leaving a door open. But I don't know,
ahead of its time.
But as the put upon everyman, it works because all he does is start shrieking no, you know?
And I mean, I could only imagine like being, I mean, I was alive in the day, but like not old enough to be seeing these movies, but still, like, because I don't think that anyone left Evil Dead 1981 like expecting a sequel, but still that's like a 6-year gap between movies. But then it's still like another 5, I believe, until Army of Darkness comes out. So that's a long time to wait for a resolution to that cliffhanger.
I wonder who, because I adored this movie, and it's certainly, I don't know, I've never bothered to make a top 10 list of my top 10 horror movies, because I feel like my opinions fluctuate too much, and I grow and I change and things. So what's the point? But unless we did it for a pod, I would do it for that. But so I don't know if this movie would occupy a space there. Maybe it would definitely be a contender while I'm mulling things over. But as far as franchises, I would be very curious to hear from anyone, if you want to DM me, who's among their top franchises, or maybe even if this is their top franchise, the Evil Dead franchise. Like, I'd be interested to hear like what motivates them, particularly with the cinematic steps, the intervals.
You have some interesting top franchises, because I think
I do.
Your favorites are Psycho and Texas Chainsaw. So you're kind of, you know, you're on a
also
like
Nightmare and Chucky.
yeah, totally. But those are the ones that I like. I hear. I'm just like, oh, interesting. You know, not the more mainstream ones that most people will latch on to.
Of course. Yeah, but I can give you justification for all of that, and I think I'd love to hear someone in a non-defensive way. I wouldn't attack someone, but I'd just be like, why? You know, what is it about the Evil Dead franchise?
Which is how people should, you know, respond when they hear an opinion that differs from theirs. Yeah. But yeah, the Evil Dead as a franchise is not one that I'm like, oh yeah, like it's like I love every single movie in this franchise. You know, I like most like all of them, but you know, I'm not sitting there just like, yes, every single one is a gem, and it's, you know, I watch them every year. It's been so long since I've watched these movies, and not to say that this is not my like subgenre, or like, you know, the kind of horror movies that I like or don't like, but it's not it's definitely like nowhere near like a top franchise for me. And I don't know, like, I'd have to compile, I think maybe back in the day this would have been in a top 10 for me, but now I don't, like probably a top 20. Like, I'd really have to go through it, because I rated this on Letterboxd, as I do after I watch a movie, which apparently a lot of people do. Well, I give it 4.5 stars, but which I think is well deserved, because I was really enjoying this. Like, I was laughing. Like, I don't do that very often. Like, I'm not a very emotive person when I watch a movie. Like, I don't get scared. I don't like laugh along to things, but there were so many moments in here I was just like, okay, because normally if I watch a movie, I'm on my phone or being distracted, like the millennial scum that I am, and it's, you know, there was enough happening that I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna put my phone down. I'm interested in this. But no, I was gonna say, because I did go to see The Menu, which just came out, which is really good.
Yes.
But there was this couple in front of me, and the lights came on, and I like stood up, and I could see down, and they had their phones out, and both of them were on Letterboxd, like already giving it a rating. Like the lights had just come up. I'm just like, easy there. Like I didn't give it a rating till I walked out to the parking lot, but like they were like right on top of that shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to sit with.
That's dedication.
I've rated one movie. Yeah, no, I've rated one movie on Letterboxd. I just started. I did the thing, and it's Insidious, and the only reason is because I screened it for my mom, and so I was free. I wasn't even taking notes. Like I was free to just sit there and just enjoy it, and occasionally glance over because she had never seen it before. And she got scared. It was great. And I just got to kind of like distill it. Yeah, because I got to distill it into like kind of its essence, which is something I think you have to kind of live with the movie, and it helps if you love it to kind of distill it to an essence, because you can just think about, well, what do I love about it? What are its strengths? And I didn't have any weaknesses to address. Sorry if I'm spoiling my attitude on the movie for a future pod, but I do have a lot to discuss.
I don't think anyone's like coming into these podcast episodes being like, I want to know how they felt about it. You know, I think that...
Oh, he spoiled it!
Yeah. I don't think anyone cares about what our feelings are towards it. They just, like, are more interested in, like, what we have to
banter.
Say. Yeah. The banter. Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, so yeah, I have exactly one movie. And I'm still working, so it's still occupying a lot of my time. But I'm thinking, like... You know, it'd be nice to dip in and start, asking, like, what kind of movies? Because I know people who go and see movies and then immediately put a review. I don't know if I can do that. Yeah. And maybe it's also just...
I don't put, like, when I go on Letterboxd and rate a film, I don't, like, write anything up because that requires too much time. I've already got, like, enough on my plate. I'll just give it an arbitrary rating that's good enough for me. And I might change it after a couple of days or months if I go back to it. But I'm not going to have, like, some articulated, like, paragraph that I've already, like, thought out in my head, like a Roger Ebert type, from watching it, that I have to...
Well, I wouldn't do what Roger Ebert did, because half the movies he thumbs down, I would never thumbs down.
I think that this is...
He thumbs down them either.
I mean, I think this is another one that he did really like. I don't remember exactly what he rated it, but I remember, like, the VHS box for it on the front cover had, like, his rating and something, so... Hold on, let me see if I can find it.
While you're looking, can we also talk about that VHS cover? That was one of the scariest ones for me as a kid.
The skull with the eyeballs?
I remember seeing the skull with the eyeballs look, because they were looking at me. And and whenever I would go, before I even watched horror movies, I remember I would go camp out in the sections and just kind of like look at all the covers. I think we've touched on this before. But and just kind of speculate about what they might be about, and the covers... would entice me, and this was one that, I mean, it came out in 87, so it must have been on VHS by the time I was 8. And 8, 9, and 10, I was too afraid to even look the skull in the eye, as it were, and to this day... I
wonder whose eyes those are.
I don't know. I've never known. I'm curious. I wonder if anybody knows, but, I mean... It's on the cover of the 25th anniversary Blu-ray edition.
Well, we do see the skeleton of Jake in the cellar afterwards, so maybe it's him.
You think?
Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars. That's what it says on the VHS. It's just like 3 stars, Roger Ebert, which incidentally is also what he gave Child's Play that we talked about last week, because we weren't sure where he landed with that one. So
that's a thumbs up technically, right?
I would think so. I mean, that's like a 75% Rotten Tomatoes approved. Fresh rating.
Okay, because okay, that's interesting. But I mean, still, anyway, I don't mind writing a mini essay, not something that somebody's gonna have to like comb through, because even I don't want to read that, but just a few lines that deftly kind of capture. What is it like to sit through this film, or even if somebody's curious about what I think about it.
I don't review movies. Like, it's not something I'll do them on my Patreon, because we do a monthly thing, and even then I feel like I'm not reviewing it. Like, I'll like talk about it and just like say, basic thoughts that come to my head. But it's funny because I feel like a lot of people who know me or just like, that are friends or acquaintances in real life, they don't really know about my channel. Like, they know that I YouTube, but they're just like, oh yeah, you're gonna review that? And I'm just like, I don't really do reviews. Like, I can't remember.
Right.
I mean, if it's something like major, like Scream or Halloween, and it's like, yeah, sure, I'll talk about it. But it's this like hilarious misconception that people will say just like, oh yeah, he reviews movies on YouTube. I'm just like, actually, it's a little bit more involved than that. Thank you. But
a little boundary there. Draw a boundary. A little crowbar of separation between...
Which is fine. And it's funny because like my like if I look at my analytics on YouTube, so few of my viewers and subscribers are from Canada. So it's like nobody knows who I am here. I'm anonymous. I'm bigger in the States, okay?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea of my scope, but my reach. But the people who have gotten in touch with me, thank you. You're wonderful. I do want to say also just like huge, just expand upon like why Bruce Campbell is such a good actor within this movie. The hand bit before he cuts it off, I always speculate as an actor what it must be like to have to lay on the floor when he's got his nails embedded into the into the ground and he's doing that like slow tug, like slowly pulling himself.
Well, I think that they're pushing him from,
of course,
from behind.
He may even just be pushing himself. I always think maybe his knees are bent and he's pushed up against like a block or something and he just kind of keeps pushing himself like until he's like standing tall or whatever. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that can all of that can work. But I just mean the sensation of it, because even that, like, I'm just like, oh, your face, like, along, like, you were just talking about getting into fights and like, no, my face, like, I think I'd be too, this is the moneymaker, this is what's going to sell
especially
tickets for Evil
him,
Dead 2. But just the sensation of it, and I've speculated about it many times, and I've never actually gone through and done it, and I don't think I will, because
maybe
I'm too
their
worried about my
set
face.
was a little, like, it might have looked like untreated wood, but it might have been like a smooth, glossy surface.
I doubt it.
That cabin, I mean, I think we probably talked about this with the original in that episode, but I mean, like, that is an impossible space. Like, it's so much bigger. Like, I was looking on here, I think like they filmed it in like, obviously on a huge set. But you like look at that, and just like there's all these like hidden passageways between the walls that sort of like, twist and turn around everywhere. And it's just like going through doors and doors and doors and doors, and now we're outside. So it's like this tiny little, like from the front, it's like this big.
It's a box.
But in the back, it's just, it's huge.
This like cavernous maze of like shutters and wood, and it's just I adore. But that's also part of, again, the sense of humor of it. It's just like, how could that possibly exist in there?
The next time they'll make another Evil Dead movie going back to the cabin, and then we'll see that there's now a staircase that goes up to like a second level, and there's an it'll be like the Halloween 5 Myers house, even though like from the front it'll still be the tiny little cabin.
I would applaud that. I would be all about that. I think, again, maybe just in terms of like this movie shares my sense of humor. The things that it thinks are funny, I think are funny. But that's true of a lot of Sam Raimi projects. Even Sam Raimi has directed a movie or two that I haven't been entirely on board with the film by and large, but I can always get a chuckle. He can always do something that I'm just kind of like, ha ha ha, there you are.
I mean, like, it seems like mostly he produces movies, like his Ghost House or whatever. Like that's his big thing. Like, he did do the new Doctor Strange movie. I don't remember what he did before that. But yeah, he's not like, it's mostly like not even like just executive producers. Like, I don't know how much involvement he has in it. If it's just like his studio and someone else is like, we'll oversee everything. So
I don't know anymore.
yeah.
And I'm still boycotting Disney movies. So
my relationship with like the MCU is I just don't. It's too much. It's too overwhelming. Like if it's taken me this long to see Ash versus the Evil Dead, because that's like 3 measly little seasons of a show that I have to watch in addition
short seasons to
the 4.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. To like the 4 movies that are already there. Like imagine how I must feel when there's like 30 fucking superhero movies that are a dime
plus
a dozen.
Series.
Like they're all the same.
Plus...
Yes, and now the series. And there's like I could not keep count. I don't know how many there are.
You'd have to go on Wikipedia
and even when I do go on Wikipedia, it's so like everything's so confusing because it's all about like what's to come, what is like the next phase and stuff. And there's even like the other like the pre-Disney Plus shows like the Daredevils and the Jessica
Netflix
Jones.
shows, yeah.
And it's just like, do those count too? Because now they're sort of incorporated into the universe. And that's, to me, it's just like, you lost me. You lost a customer. Because I was already like hanging by a thread there. And now it's just like, you've made this too complicated for me. I do not deal with this much shit. You know, like I like things to be neat and organized and,
I know a lot of people who feel that way too.
Yeah. That it's almost like their eyes were bigger than their stomachs. I had a conversation with my bestie Bonnie about the MCU because I think she was seriously considering seeing Endgame, and I was like, "Have you seen Infinity War?" And she said, "No." I'm like, no, okay, wait, how many MCU? I know you fell off like somewhere in phase 1. How many have you seen? She's like, I've seen both the Iron Man movies. I'm like, there are 3, so that you already. She's like, I saw the first Thor, and then I think she saw the first Captain America and the first Avengers movie, and then she fell off. And I'm like, oh honey, it's not going to make any sense. You don't see Endgame. Like, do you want me to walk you? And this is when I was still watching Disney stuff. I was like, do you want me to walk you through? And she's like, well, how many movies is it now? And I think at that point it was 22. She was like, oh no. no big deal. I'll see something else. Yeah, and you know me, like I love continuity in my franchises. I need continuity in my franchises, but there's like with this, it's just like you're asking too much of me. Like I would take a 13 movie Halloween franchise with no cohesiveness or coherency or any semblance of like a through line that works in any way, and I will watch all 13 of those movies, even the ones I hate, before I would sit through even a fraction of what is in the MCU. And even like the Evil Deads, because I don't think, I mean, we'll get to it when we talk about the 2013 and the new one, obviously, depending on how it connects with everything else. But it's like, even these 3, like we already said, it's like there's connective tissue, but it's kind of choppy still at best. It's like, it's kind of like, two steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So maybe I don't love continuity all that much. I mean, it depends,
I mean, you're making me really wonder about something now, because I won't get into it, but I will say the 2 sequels in the original trilogy of the Evil Dead franchise, like the Cardinal 3, the 2 sequels do kind of take like, where we left off and replay it, but like, at a different speed, shall we say? Because I feel like it gets expanded on in the next movie versus like how Evil Dead 2 ends. Yeah. But I'm wondering if a huge reason for doing that is Sam Raimi not having the confidence that the audience, because they were released so far apart, is not having the confidence that the audience who is coming to see this movie has seen the 2 movies prior, the movie prior, like whatever. I'm wondering if he did it just so anybody can arrive at this and kind of go, oh, I get what's going on. All right.
Well, I don't know the whatever between Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, but apparently the reason why they did the opening of Evil Dead 2 like that is because they didn't have the rights to the original, because it was a different production company or whatever. So rather just to be more economical than to have Bruce Campbell and 4 other actors come in and do kind of like a quick, like, abridged recap of all that stuff. They just kind of took the greatest hits or just the most important bits of what happened in the first movie to have in that opening. So who owns Army of Darkness? Is that Universal?
I believe so.
Because maybe they just didn't have the rights to the footage from Evil Dead, or maybe or Evil Dead 2, and maybe it was just like a pattern at that point. We're just gonna bring in new actors and stuff. Because I mean, like, even in the third movie, which we'll talk about, because like that whole bit with Bridget Fonda playing the girlfriend, like that's Linda. Even like the shortest appearance of Linda. And it's like, I could have used more of her. And there isn't the third one is when they introduce S-Mart, because I don't think that there's any mention of S-Mart in Evil Dead 2. No. But that's how well this works, because when I think of that, I still like see the Evil Dead 1981. I'm just like, yeah, this is Ash. He works at S-Mart in whatever department he's in. But it's like we first see it in Army of Darkness when he's just like, shop smart, shop S-Mart.
Yes. And for all intents and purposes, he is arguably, there is a case to be made for him to be a completely different character in every single movie. Yet the Bruce Campbell of it all, I accept it, and I don't know anybody who doesn't. I don't know anybody who walks away from this franchise going like, I don't know, I mean, I just don't believe that Bruce Campbell is the same person. And I've never heard anybody have that issue, you know?
This is why Bruce Campbell deserves to be on a much higher echelon than a Jamie Lee Curtis, because he's still playing the same character.
Even if it's scripted differently, we still get... But, oh my God.
That's what we need now. Like a new movie is just like Bruce Campbell versus Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh my God.
Place your bets.
Oh my God.
And that, you know what? I mean, maybe that's what we need, like the MCU of like the horror franchises. Just get all of them together. Just to see that it won't work at all, but I mean, just to have one.
The Dark Universe is already tried. I mean, they kind of succeeded with the Invisible Man, and
but that's the only one.
That's the only one. Isn't there something coming up though? Isn't there another one that they're making?
Wolfman.
Yeah, the Wolfman. But I heard for a long time there were rumors that a Bride of Frankenstein like movie is coming. And who knows, but I don't know, whatever. But so we'll see. I mean, I'm always for that. I actually liked Dracula Untold. Was that what it was called? The one with I
haven't seen it.
Luke Evans. Oh, I actually liked it. I know a lot of people thought it was shitty and hated the kind of. I was like, it's a movie. I mean, come on, people.
I don't think the Blumhouse Invisible Man is connected to that dark universe per se.
No,
that was was it Dracula Untold, and then whatever
Untold and the Mummy.
Yeah, the Tom Cruise Mummy, and I think that is what killed it.
Yeah,
was Tom Cruise box office. It's like sometimes he's box office gold, sometimes he's box office poison. You never know which Tom Cruise you're gonna get. You know, this should just be like Tom Cruise versus everyone.
Well, I feel like that also was the nail in the coffin, and we probably won't ever do pods on these movies, so I don't feel bad discussing them. But I feel like because I feel like there was a case maybe to be made from a production standpoint of why Dracula Untold wouldn't work, because Luke Evans wasn't really a name, and he wasn't even really in the public consciousness or anything like that, and it is like an origin story, and anytime you like kind of like do like a villain origin story like and promote it as an origin story, people might not want to come. They just want to go to a good horror movie, and it wasn't a good horror movie per se. It wasn't like a Friday night, let's go out with our friends and eat popcorn and enjoy a good horror movie. It was a battle tale, like it was a angsty period melodrama, and I liked it for those reasons with some darkness. But then you get Tom Cruise in there. You're like, okay, let's switch gears and put in a bunch of stars, and let's just like pound the shit out of it, make it Hollywood blockbuster, like fill the screen with CGI and everything. And then that didn't work, and they're like, okay, done. Let's just make indie feeling movies with lower budgets and Elizabeth Moss.
Well, I
And
mean,
so far, so good.
yeah, that's the thing, because I feel like as long as they're keeping it to Blumhouse, and I know I've criticized Blumhouse in the past a lot, but I think that if they can make something happen with just their updates specific to their studio, like that could be a thing. I'd be interested in that universe.
But now that merger with Blumhouse and James Wan, I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
Anyway,
as long as they keep Tom Cruise out of it, that's I don't know why I always have this like anti-Tom Cruise agenda.
So do I.
I feel like Tom Cruise is like the Joan Crawford of like our time.
He is arguably like one of the last standing movie stars of our time. Like, because that word is becoming less and less relevant as time goes on. But he is still, you know, like this Titan name over the title, you know, bullshit. But but movie stars can have flops. And if they put him anywhere near a Castle of Kandar, I don't want to see it. I'm gonna walk in the other direction and say I'm gonna modify a Randy Meeks quote and just say I'll wait for streaming. You know, because I will be curious, but I don't want to spend any money on it. I'll stream it when I'm on that platform,
unless it's straight to streaming, because you know that's a lot of.
There's that too.
Yeah.
But I have a lot more things to stream before I would ever stream a Tom Cruise vehicle. Sorry, folks, if there's any Tom Cruise aficionados out there. I'm not insulting you. Yeah. I just feel insulted by him.
I think
he's my cherry picker this week, actually.
Oh, wow. I think it's funny because when we did the first Evil Dead episode, I think we got to a point where we stopped having things about Evil Dead to talk about, and we just started talking randomly like we are now. And it's not like a bad thing to the movie. Like it doesn't negate like a testament to how good this is. I just think that this is such a basic movie, and then I mean that in the best way possible. Like there's only so much you can say unless you were like a professor on the Evil Dead franchise, and you had like this Wikipedic knowledge of just like everything that happened with the production and yada yada yada, and you could talk about it for ages. But I just feel like, I mean, not to like sell us short and say this is going to be a boring podcast. It's just like Evil Dead 2 is good. You should watch it. It's one of our favorite movies. Next, you know. But I get like that's how I feel. Like I have passion for it, and you know I can talk about it, but I just like it's so limited of like the things that I could say.
Sure. Well, much in the same vein as like, you know, you talking about yourself as a YouTuber and how people probably should not turn to you for reviews because that's not what you do. This pod has never really been about information dumps. We've brought in trivia here and there that we find interesting, or that we, you know, may not be commonly known that we think other people might find interesting, or even that just comes up in conversation. But this isn't a heavily researched, you know, kind of like, let's break it down. Let's start at the beginning and walk through the production history and everything. Because I feel like there are a lot of pods that do that, to the point where I think we even had a discussion at the inception of the first pod when we were doing commentaries and stuff with you, just to let you know. Yeah, just to let you know, just for your information, trivia will come up, you know, but I'm not. There are so many horror podcasts, and this was like two years ago now. There are so many podcasts out there that just kind of recount the same IMDb facts over and over and over again, and some of them get them wrong. Some of them, you know, don't source them properly. So I'm sitting there going like, actually, that's a falsity, and you don't know that because you don't have the history with this movie that I do. The person I'm listening to on a podcast who I don't want to interact with. I don't want to get in your DMs and tell you what you got wrong. I'm just gonna unsubscribe. And so for those reasons, I've never wanted to be part of an information dump podcast. I'm much more of the ilk of like, well, we've got a dynamic. People like listening to us. You've got an opinion. I've got an opinion. Let's bounce them off each other. And if something else comes up, the tangents are... I love the tangents.
It's more about... It's less review and more just like experience and thoughts.
And conversation.
Like exactly, yeah. I mean, I suppose that's been working, Let us know.
I haven't
if
heard
it
any
isn't.
complaints.
Yeah.
I mean, if it
Oh,
isn't,
there's
you're probably
complaints,
gone
but
by
fuck
now.
you.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we can only do what we can do, and we can't please everybody. So if you are pleased by what you're listening, thank you.
Yeah.
By what you're listening to, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Even that's bad grammar, but whatever. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
And if you're not, you're probably not listening anymore anyway.
Yeah.
So later.
I guess if I just had one other thing just to say about this particular movie, just in terms of things, because because the first one is so vague to me. Like every time I watch it, I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, that, but I forget about it afterwards.
Sure.
Because I don't remember in the infamously when Professor Nobi was talking on his thing, and I say infamously because that is what kind of formed the cherry picker to what it is now, or just like what it is he was saying, because this is the first time we actually get to see him in the flashbacks, and I just feel like the lore is expanded on so much more because we see like, oh, that's where they got the book from, and it's just like it was almost like just to get that visual rather than just hearing about it as like an exposition through a tape recorder. I felt like more immersed in the mythology of like the Evil Dead verse, of just seeing like, okay, so that's where they got the book, then they went to the cabin, and then I can kind of like piece together what the trajectory is of like where the story goes from like point A to point B.
Right. And the fact that Annie, the element of Annie, like bringing kind of like the lost pages of the Necronomicon along with her, and that those are what need to be read in order to kind of like negate or neutralize everything that's going on and send the demon back from whence it came or whatever. And because again, like we talked about it with the Evil Dead, the first movie, that climax happens and I get kind of lost. It's a feast for the eyes with all the, low budget practical effects and the hot cereal, the cream of wheat coming out of various, appendages and whatnot, orifices and everything. And the pencil in the ankle, like all of that, just everything that's going on every which way, it all just kind of like unravels and becomes madness, and that's fine. I do appreciate a little bit more of the second time using this word in the pod, cohesiveness of the plot elements. I mean, there aren't a lot. It is incredibly simple, but it's still detailed enough that I get what's going on every moment. And even when the madness is happening, I'm getting like, okay, madness is happening. It's a designated spot for madness, and it's exposing, whether it's exposing Ash's madness, laughing along with the lamp and and the books and all the inanimate objects in that room, just to kind of like see, oh God, he could cross over. Like the man is not doing well. He needs some help. And then what does he get? Abuse from his peers, his would-be peers. I don't know. I appreciate all of that. The whole
newbies and the nobies.
I think it's a pretty perfect version of what it is. I wouldn't really change anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's probably.
I mean, yeah, I agree because I gave it 4.5 stars, but I don't know if just because it's not maybe my brand of horror completely, that it's like I wouldn't say this is like 5 stars for me. But again, like those star rankings are so arbitrary, so it's really like anyone's whim.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think we could probably comfortably mosey on over to the cherry picker.
Let's mosey.
Let's mosey.
It's not like we killed people. On purpose.
Okay, cherry on top. Because we're not doing Annie's scream.
Or Bruce Campbell's eyebrow deserves
to,
or his arm, that bicep. Ooh, but I mean, is there anyone who deserves it more than Ash?
No, it's gonna be Ash, but I would say if I had to make a case for anyone else, I might say Bobby Joe.
I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if we did, but why? I want to know why.
I don't know. I just she's just so entertaining from the moment she shows up on screen. Like that whole bit, whenever they're introduced, they're just like, I forget what the dialogue is, but they're just like, they're already butting heads when they meet each other, and just like,
Yeah.
It's like, why do you hate each other? You just like
Exactly.
It's just funny, and the spitting, the very unladylike behavior, and just the fact that she kind of gets the most abuse. Other than Ash, I'm just like, she's the one that swallows the eyeball, or doesn't swallow it, but it like flies into her mouth.
Yeah,
she's the one that runs.
Dragged
She gets
by the tree.
shot in the shoulder, dragged by the tree.
Yes.
Like she's just the one that maybe if she hung in the back a little bit more and didn't interact as much, because then they threw Ash in the fruit cellar and she spit on it. She like full on spit down the fruit cellar. So. Yeah. I don't know, like, because I mean that could be like deplorable, like I hate you, you're going to be the cherry picker nomination behavior, but I like it too. It's just too entertaining to me. So
it is too entertaining. I enjoy her a great deal. Also, she deserves honorable mention for sure, but cherry on top
is going to be Ash. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. So now let's do the actual cherry picker. So last week for Child's Play, we asked you between my nomination of Walter Criswell, who was the department store supervisor who Karen Barkley worked for, versus Dr. Ardmore, your nomination, who was the psychologist in charge of the facility where Andy was locked away. And we asked you which one of those deserved to die the most. And across Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Also keep in mind, we are recording this a little bit earlier just because of time constraints. So we didn't get everyone's vote in because the Child's Play episode has not actually been released yet. But 327 for Criswell versus 461 for Ardmore.
Oh my God.
And
I want to hear.
Before I even read anything, I just want to say that I am shocked and appalled because I'm questioning, like, does anyone even remember this movie? Because not to like make a defense for Ardmore, actually to make a defense for Ardmore, because he's basically, he doesn't have the facts in front of, like, he's unaware of the supernatural element of this. As far as he's concerned, here's this 6-year-old child who has escaped from his room, who's wielding a scalpel. He's already been linked to 2 crime scenes where there's been murders, and all he's doing is restraining the child and taking the scalpel out of his hand to either protect the child from harming himself or other people. I don't know why I know why you nominated him. You had your own personal, more shallow reasons. I was picking just a really bitchy queen who obviously had a very miserable life and hated himself and everyone who worked for him. But apparently, most of the people don't see it that way.
Maybe I wasn't the only one who had that gut reaction, though. I'm curious to hear the comments.
Maybe we'll see. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there because I am shocked and appalled. I'm always appalled, but especially shocked this time. So, Rashim says, Criswell gets my vote because he gave off narcissistic vibes and reminded me of a manager I once had. Okay. And we've all had that manager.
Oh, dear God.
We've all had that bitchy queen. What did you said it like a messy queen, or?
Said stuffy queen.
Yeah. Slayer fan 87. Criswell gets my vote. It's not Karen's fault. They are low staff. It's her son's birthday. For God's sake, I blame him for the death of Maggie, iconic member of the Pink Ladies.
Yeah.
She's in Greece. Yeah.
Marty Maraschino.
And it's true. It's just like, if you work at a job, it's not that's not your responsibility.
Oh my God, Zach, stop making a case. Go on.
I'm going to make a fucking case because this is.
You're not going to win it. The verdict is in.
But it looks like most of the people are saying Criswell.
Yeah, well, usually I'm part of like a vocal minority. Maybe you're part of the vocal minority this week. Welcome to my world.
I'm okay with losing, but this one it hits different, I'm just saying that.
This is hilarious.
Thomas Baker says, this was a tough one, but my vote goes to Walter.
Okay.
Michael 92, Chriswell, because he wouldn't help Kevin's mom at the airport in Home Alone.
Oh.
Is that the same actor?
I guess.
Death to him. Neon Icon. Dr. Ardmore is clearly deranged, but Crisco up there is looking mighty judgmental. This is a tough one. Well, that was rude. Adrian Ramirez. I'm sad we never got to see Criswell react to Maggie's death. I'm sure he wouldn't have cared.
Hilarious.
He would have just been like, well, he would have cared
that,
because they would have had to hire someone new, but.
Right.
Yeah.
That, he would have been inconvenienced.
Yeah.
Who's going to work shoes now?
It's like, I'm going to have to step in and work shoes until we find a replacement.
That would have been entertaining. We did want more Criswell after our discussion. Like, it's like, hey, he should have.
He literally should have been killed. He should have been in the movie more and just like, because that. I mean, if this was a sequel to Child's Play, where Chucky, we already knew Chucky was alive and was running amok, he totally would have been killed. He would have been like the equivalent of like the teacher in 2, where just like, I don't like this bitch, I'm gonna kill him. TP Hoarder said, oh wait, did I get Green Koopa says Ardmore looks like Cronenberg.
Oh, I disagree, but okay.
Maybe it's the glasses.
Cronenberg is actually, I think Cronenberg is actually pretty attractive, but okay, go on.
Well, maybe you. Well, yeah, I know how you feel about Ardmore, but TP Hoarder says the doctor for trying to inject my poor Andy with a sedative shot. The boy is just a boy. And the doctor's just a doctor.
Oh, come on.
Rob Rangel. I voted Criswell for being a shitty and manipulative boss. Karen shouldn't be forced to cover someone else's shift if she already worked hers.
I agree.
Dayman, Fighter of the Nightman. Criswell, handily. The doc thought he was dealing with a psychotic child patient who was a suspect in multiple homicides. Criswell was a dick and an exploitative boss.
Agreed. But that's really interesting to me because the vocal minority was on your side this week. And
maybe that's because they
case.
see like it's the when you vote for something and it's just like you're validated because you see like I voted for the right vote. This is what most people have chosen. But when you're like in the minority, you're just gonna be like, well, these are the reasons why you're all wrong. And so I will
say if I were going actions. And voting, like what is scripted and everything like that. Yeah. A worthy contender against Criswell would have been the peddler. I mean, because he's an attempted rapist and he's disgusting and he has no redeemable values. He's the reason the whole movie happens to Andy. And so, I mean, on paper, it makes perfect sense. The problem is I have an even more...
He's the reason the movie happens to Andy, not Charles Lee Ray.
Well, because he's the one, he's the messenger. He's the one who delivers Charles Lee Ray to Karen, who delivers it to Andy. And Karen doesn't know any better. But no, the peddler doesn't know any better either. But it is stolen. Like, let's just, it is a stolen doll. So anyway, steal this yourself. I think I dated him. Anyway, okay, I'm going to stop quoting Child's Play. And I'm going to say... I went with my gut. I always say vote your heart, vote your conscience, but that particular week I voted my gut because there's something happens in my body that just rejects that character when he's on screen. And I got confirmation from my bestie Bonnie, who hasn't really seen any of these movies. And she said, yeah, those glasses look, for some reason, when they're on women in the 80s, they look so cool. And when they're on men, they just make them look creepy. So I voted for you. I'm like, thank you. So I think it maybe even just aesthetically people responded to it. And maybe I played that political card unknowingly. But I did, I think people may be responding in a similar way that I do to just the way the character affects the air.
Are we still talking about Child's Play? I thought you were picking a nomination for Evil Dead 2.
No. I just wanted to get into it anyway.
Okay. No. Fair enough.
So cherry picker for me this week. I'm gonna go with my gut, and I'm gonna choose Jake because he's He's a white American man with a gun and no emotional control, and that's kind of the worst thing in the world, or one of them in the world right now. And also, I derive so much pleasure. I know I hate a character when they get hurt, and I'm like, yeah. And when Annie slams the door on him after, and hasn't she? I can't remember if she stabbed him before that. Does she stab him first?
She stabbed him in the gut, yeah.
With the dagger?
By
yeah.
accident.
With the Kandarian dagger. And
didn't even apologize.
And didn't even apologize. Well, she didn't have the time, but she tried to carry him. She tried to lift him, and she's going, that is a scene. That is a scene. I fucking love that scene, too. Yeah. But... And then, like, shutting the door on his body and everything, I'm just like, yeah, shut it more. Cut it bitch in half. I really dislike that character. The whole putting them at gunpoint and shrieking Bobby Joe. It's just, I think I've mentioned on the pod before, there's, like, Johnny Useless, who can graduate to Johnny Fuck Up. And he's a fucking Johnny Fuck Up. Like, fuck you. Just fuck you. Go, bro, I hope you're burning in hell. That's my vote for this week is Jake.
You're not gonna pick Professor Nobi, hey? That was your big thing last time.
Well, we made rules.
Yeah, but he counts this time.
I don't have a visceral reaction to him. We just went over how on paper,
yeah,
sure, but no.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we could have also made a case, just sorry to go back to cherry on top, but even possessed Henrietta.
That would be a more fun.
It's too late.
Yeah, it's too late. That would be a more fun cherry on top. Like it'd be like, oh, what a superlative. But I don't honestly believe that. I don't honestly believe that. She's a highlight for sure.
I'm a little torn because I feel like you're really like talking up Annie like she's this great character. I don't really like her that much.
Oh, I love her.
But I feel like I'd probably pick Ed Getley because, like, who is he? What is he doing there? He's such a nothing character. He just adds nothing. He's taken out super early, completely ineffective.
I remember.
I mean, not to do the thing that you do where you just assume that, like, two straight white people are together. But I mean, like, they were full on kissing, so I just assumed that was her boyfriend. And she did not mourn. She did not. It was like, nope. It's over. So I don't think he was that important. It was just.
It was a tensile connection at best.
And he got thrown into the fucking picture frame, and it wasn't like he did it on purpose. So yeah, I'm gonna go for him just because I don't know. Anyway, you can vote your heart, vote your conscience, and that poll will show up on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. If you are new to the Cherry Picker and you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. But you can also listen to these episodes on any podcast streaming platform. The RSS feed link is in the descriptions below. And if you are listening to us, you can find us on YouTube as well if you want to watch our talking heads as we ramble on about these movies and such. Yeah. If you would like to follow us on social media, you can go to Instagram at the Cherry Picker Pod. We're also on Twitter. Because I always get like flustered at this part because like literally when I created the account there was already a Cherry Picker, so I don't know because like if you type Cherry Picker I don't think we showed up. So I made it so it was like all the consonants and none of the vowels because I was just like tired of like trying to find like a number or whatever. I don't know. We're there. The link is in the YouTube and the is it your face? Does it have at least an icon next to it with you going? No, like, it has the Cherry Picker logo.
Oh, the Cherry Picker logo. Okay, look for the logo, folks. Look for the logo.
But there is a link
if you're on Twitter
in the YouTube video and on the whatchamacallit, the episode information if you're listening to it. And if you do want to support on Patreon, it's my Patreon. You can subscribe to even like the lowest tier that will get you all of these episodes 4 or 5 days ahead of time that you can enjoy over the weekend. I do want to welcome a new Patreon supporter who just signed up. So welcome aboard to Alicia Joe.
Yay!
Or Alicia Joe, one of the other, but
Yay!
yeah, yay, hey,
Alicia Joe! Alicia Joe!
Alicia Joe.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. And if you also are on Patreon, if you're signed up to the Freddy Krueger tier, that will give you access to our bonus podcast episode, The Cherry Picker After Dark. This month for November, we did Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 3, but you will also have access to all of the previous Cherry Picker After Darks, which we did cover Seasons 1 and 2 as well. So, with that said, our personal social medias, where can they find you?
You can find me at Edward is Truth exclusively on Instagram and YouTube. I am so stoked though. Like people have been subscribing. I think I mentioned I had over 100. I have over 200 subscribers now, just off what I posted months ago. So thank you everybody who subscribed. More is coming. Just thank you so much. Please be patient. I want to repay your attentions. How about you, Zach Cherry? Where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at RetroBitchface. It's all one word. You can find me on Twitter at ZachCherry8. And you can go to my main YouTube channel, Zach Cherry. ZACK.
Because you're so big in the States.
Yeah. ZACK if you're Canadian. Cherry, like the fruit. The fruit salad. Yes. And you can find me over there. New stuff is coming as well. It's been a slow month. Been focusing on the podcast, but I got something.
It's been slow for everybody. Things are tough all over.
Yeah. I don't know what that means, but anyway, what do we got going on next week?
We've got that. Okay, this is really good because I've been for a long time waiting. And now it's finally that, remember when it released, I think we all remember where we were when it hit the water. That movie that was so good. Remember, Zach?
No, I don't.
Oh, me neither. I really don't.
Yeah. I don't think we actually have anything planned for next week. After all that build-up, all that suspense, we're still... No, because we're a little bit earlier. We haven't fine-tuned the December schedule yet, but stay tuned for an announcement of what's to come in December.
Yeah.
But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will be right back.